Right, hello again, folks, and welcome back to you science fiction fans and anybody else who might be interested. Hopefully, a few of you. Right, today I've got the second part of my Hugo Winners project. Now, just to bring anybody who didn't see the last one up to speed, basically back in the 1960s, 70s, early 80s, all I did was read science fiction and comic books. Now, because it was more convenient for me to read short stories, I tended to stick with those. I did read a few novels, but mainly I stuck with short stories because during lunch hours, you could fit a short story in. Travel on public transport to and from work, you could normally, fit a bit of one in or a complete one. And now that I'm back into collecting and reading science fiction, I'm on a bit of a nostalgia trip there. I thought I'll read some novels. So I thought, where do we go? Where do we start? So I thought, well, I suppose the best place to start is with those novels that were considered to be the best. And so I thought, well, the Hugo Award winners were novels that were very well thought of, judged to be the best in their particular year. And so I'm attempting to read as many Hugo Award winning novels as I can and report back to you. It's not these are not reviews as such. I'm not going through and sort of like picking the bones out of the plot and the characters. It's not like a 15-20 minute review. It's more my impressions of the book. These impressions are in no way designed to stop you reading a book or get you to read one. Just purely my impressions of that book, and so I think that's all I need to say with regard to what we're doing here. Right now, the first book I read was Down Below Station by C.J. Cherry. It's a lady author, in case you're not familiar. This won the Hugo Award in 1982, I think it was. And apart from Hyperion, which I reviewed, well, no, I didn't review it at all, which I gave my opinion on last time. This is probably the most recent book I've read, most contemporary, because I'm stuck in the old vintage authors. Okay, now this is fairly big book. It runs to, I think it was 434 pages, and it's quite small print, so it seemed like more. And to get it out of the way, I didn't care for this book at all. But we'll get into that in a minute. Now, I'm not going to, when I'm talking about these books, I'm not going to go deeply into the plots. I'm just going to give you a rough idea of what the book was about. Basically, this one is man starts to go out, expand into outer space for commercial and other purposes, exploration. And because they can't find any habitable planets, they start to build a series of space stations where ships can dock, refuel, carry on commerce, and until they get to a planet which is inhabitable. It's called Pell, and they build a station there. And because they refer to the planet Pell as down below, they call it Down Below Station. And this book deals with the deals with the politics surrounding the battle for the battle to control the station. This is a battle between the I forget what they call them now. It's the union and whoever on I forget whether it's the Federation or, I mean, as I say, quite honestly I lost the plot with this one, and it's just as I say, it's just a kind of a space opera really, although it does have a lot of hard science fiction involved. Now, I think the reason I didn't get on with this book is because there's no central protagonist that you can hang on to, like a Winston Smith in 1984 or a Gallifloy in Stars My Destination. There are lots of characters in this book. It's quite easy to lose track, and there's no character that provides the thread through the book. And there's a lot of exposition and detail, scientific detail. And as I say, I felt as if I just went on autopilot when I read this, and I didn't enjoy it at all. Now, I had mixed feelings about it in the sense that I applaud the author's ability to convey the difficulties and the complex difficulties of the politics of the book, and also the hard science, the nuts and bolts of it. I applaud that part of the book, but it really wasn't enough to keep me involved, to get me interested in any of the characters, quite frankly. And well, that's all I can really say about the book. It is part of a series. I think it's called the Trader series, and on a to market on a scale of 1 to 10, where 5 is average, I can only give it a 3. So a lot of people might get a lot from this book. It just wasn't for me. Okay, now the second one is a very famous book, Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. Now this is a strange one, in as much as it wasn't marketed as science fiction. Normally on a science fiction book you either get some science fiction up here or down here or across here where normally the price is. That's certainly the case for English books. This is a Berkeley edition from the States. There again, it's quite a long book. It's even smaller print than Down Below Station, and it runs to, memory serves, about 404 pages, so again, quite a substantial book. My feelings about this one weren't as mixed, although they were a bit mixed. So basically the plot is a ship goes to Mars, gets lost. Another ship goes out to find it, and the only survivor they find is a boy. Now he's human, but he's been brought up as a Martian, and the Martians are very, very different to us. Now the Martians insist that he goes back with the spaceship to Earth, and then the book kind of follows the boy, who is Valentine Michael Smith. He's referred to as Mike by the other characters during the course of the book, and it's him getting kind of used to Earthways. I won't tell you too much because I don't want to put any spoilers in. and eventually he forms he gets involved with the church, and eventually he forms his own church. And that's about all I can tell you without going into spoilers. There are some interesting characters in this book. Strangely enough, Valentine Michael Smith is not the kind of main character. He's kind of a background character. One of the great characters in the book is one called Jubal Harshaw. I think I've got that right. He's kind of a writer, lawyer, amongst other things. And he's got some great dialogue, some great one-liners. The book is very dialogue heavy, as I say. There's a lot of exposition in there, but I think it's. I came to this book a little bit with some apprehension because I've never read any Heinlein. I've heard about his politics, about some of his books, and but he kind of it. It's hard to explain because, this is rooted in 1961. I think it was written in 1960 and it won the Hugo in 1961. And it's kind of, to me it has a kind of a pulp resonance. Some of the dialogue is a bit like the old gangster pulps. It's just the way it came over to me, and there's a certain amount of debate about the morals of society at that time. This is actually an uncut version of the book. When it was sent in for publication, the publishers insisted that it be cut by 25% because they didn't like certain parts of it. There is actually a full version of it. I think came out in the early 90s, but Heinlein himself says he prefers this one, the cut version. So yeah, I enjoyed the book to a certain extent, although I found my mind wandering during a lot of the dialogue, the exposition, because it didn't relate to science fiction. The only thing that related to science fiction was the fact that Valentine Michael Smith, with all of his strange powers, was a Martian, and that's kind of the only connection to science fiction in a way. It's a hard book to explain in a very short time, but I enjoyed it up to a point, and on a scale of 1 to 10 with 5 as average, I would give it a 7. Okay, then I only had time to read 3 books for this particular video because, as I say, those first 2 were very long and I'm not a particularly quick reader. And the last book, I actually bought this one to review it. The way this works is that my daughter picks a year for me. And as long as I've either got the book or I haven't read it before, I read the appropriate book for that year. This one came up 1970, and it won the Hugo in 1970. I think it was written a year earlier. And I had to buy this in the HMV 2 for £7 deal. Glad I did, because I really enjoyed this book. There again, I came to it with some trepidation because I'd read certain things about Ursula Le Guin's books, and a lot of people find them a bit dull, a bit boring. This is one of her more famous books, apart from the Dispossessed, which obviously, because it won the Hugo Award too, I'll be getting round to reading. But this one basically is the story of Jen Liai. He's an Earthman, but he comes from a planet called, I can never remember it, Gethin. No, it's another planet, I can't remember the name of it. But he ends up in this winter world of Gethin. It's known as winter, it's referred to as winter. and he's an envoy who tries to get the people on Gethin to join this federation. He doesn't go on to tell you much about it. And he's the only one, they just send that one envoy down so that the people on Winter don't feel as if they're being invaded, sort of thing, And I mean, in a strange way, it struck me as a buddy story, because there's this character early on in the book who gets exiled for perceived treachery, and later on generally becomes, although he's still suspicious of him, he becomes friendly. And they, there's a lot of politics involved in this as well, but basically they have to go back to a city called Carhide, which is where Genly lands, but he gets imprisoned and he ends up in another place, which I can't remember the name of. I mean, there's a great, I'm going to say passage, it's not a passage, it goes on for pages and pages, where it describes him and his mate travelling back to Carhide for some reason, which something to do with his spaceship. He has a spaceship up in orbit, Genly, or whatever it is, Genly. And they have to do this long, I think it's 800-mile trip across glaciers, mountains, as you can imagine, on a world called Winter. It's tricky stuff. Food-wise, they have to get enough food for the trip and make sure they've got the right transport, so on and so forth. And there's this wonderful description, it goes on for pages and pages, of them trekking over this landscape. Really is beautifully written, very evocative, and I mean, Ursula Le Guin's writing style is very, very good, very nice. Reminded me a bit, I don't know why, of Mervyn Peake's Gormenghast. A bit flowery, but very easy to read. And I mean, one of the central themes of this book is that the natives of Winter, they're, what would it be, ambisexual? They're okay for 26, I think, days of the 28 in their cycle. They're just normal, whatever. And for 2 days during their sexual cycle, they can be either male or female. And of course, it throws into perspective the idea of gender stereotypes. And I think that's the main theme of the book, without giving too much away. And so, yeah, as I say, I really enjoyed this book. There's not too much more I can say without spoilers. But on a scale of, again, 1 to 10 with 5 as average, I would give it 8.5, creeping up to 9. Very, very, very good book, very readable. So that's all I have to report this time. I'm reading something at the moment. I'm about just over a third of the way through, and then I'll read a couple of more, and I'll come back and give you my thoughts on them in a few weeks. As I say, I'm not a fast reader, and most of the books I've been given so far have been quite long. So anyway, thank you for indulging me and my thoughts. I've no idea what will be next up, but thank you for viewing, thank you for subscribing. I would like, especially for a video like this, I would like some more comments, because I feel as if I'm failing in trying to communicate with you all out there. So, if any of you have got any comments, please send them. And also try and share the video so I can build up a better better number of viewers, better viewer base. Now that I've sort of moved into science fiction from collecting in general. So yeah, that's it, folks. Thanks very much, and I will see you very soon. Over and out again. Bye bye now.